Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to another episode of the Fandalorians. Of course, this week diving into Mandalorian Chapter 13, The Jedi, a long awaited episode. I'm sure everyone's got some very strong opinions, a lot of pent-up excitement, so we are going to get straight into things. So, joining me, of course, as always, our Fandalorian cast, starting right over here on my left from Smirking Gun Reviews, it is Rob Stone.
What's up, everybody? I don't want to take up any more time so we can have more time to talk. So let's introduce this guy down here.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? You know who I am. I am Don Willie. And I'm following Rob's lead. So, Marc, you can take it away.
Yeah, so I'm Marc from Enchantment of Eternity, guesting on this cast. I'm very happy to be here, and I think I chose a very good episode to join you guys in on. So, really excited to talk about that.
Yeah, this turned out to be perfect timing. I figured this was going to be something that would take all four of us to really explore fully. So very excited to have you here. Before we do get started, just want to let you all know one of the reasons Marc is joining us is, well, he's awesome, but two, to let you guys know that we will be doing The Expanse reviews over on his channel. So if you are a big fan of The Expanse, season 5 is going to be reviewed over there on Enchantment of Eternity. I will be joining Marc every week over there on his channel, and we might get a couple of these guys popping in here and there as well. So really looking forward to that. The previews for this look awesome, and I cannot wait for this to drop. So that is starting on Thursday nights, starting December 17th, pretty much the night after it premieres. Also, fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. are doing our season 2 review, and that's in about 2 weeks from now. That's going to be on Tuesday, December 15th. 6 p.m. Pacific. We'll have myself, Rob, Don, and Corey diving into the magnificence that is season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So let's dive right into things. Marc, as our guest this week, why don't you kick things off? Why don't you give us your brief opinion, feel on this week's episode, The Jedi?
Okay, so it's funny because I was talking to my sister the other day about this show, and she was telling me how she doesn't really like how it's tying into the cartoons and the extended lore because she hasn't watched the cartoons and has no intention to. And I kind of feel the same way. I don't think I'm ever going to get around to watching Clone Wars or Rebels or anything like that. So when they dive really deep into it, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I have no interest in the extended lore or anything about that. And with all that being said, this was my favorite episode of the show so far. I absolutely loved it. It didn't matter to me that I was unfamiliar with this character. I think even knowing nothing about the lore, I think it was very fascinating. They got deeper into the lore, which is what I've been waiting a year and a half for them to do. And so I was really excited about that. I thought it was a great character story. The plot of each episode is almost the same week to week, but this week I think it actually worked even better. And I'm sure I'll get into some of the details why I just absolutely love this episode.
Excellent. All right. I'm glad that this was able to pick up. I'm excited. We've talked so much about the background, the Rebels and the Clone Wars, the fact that you were not as familiar to it and still really loved how the episode was brought forward. That's awesome. I always love to see how someone unfamiliar with these characters catch their reintroduction. Don, what about you? What was your feel for this week's episode?
Listen, obviously excited to see Ahsoka Tano in real life, live action. Amazing translation from animation to screen, even better than Bo-Katan somehow. Look, this show definitely seems to be almost a video game to a certain extent. This this like almost is Knights of the Old Republic if you guys have ever played that game. And listen, that is a fan favorite game. We got fan favorite interactions, or at least what will become fan favorite interactions in the long run. And listen, I don't want to ramble on. I want Rob to get his 2 cents in here, so I'm just gonna say, love the episode, and can't wait to dive deeper into it.
Yeah, this exceeded like every expectation I think I had, and I really didn't. I try to go into these, because we don't know anything of really what's going to happen until we get there. And this, between Rosario Dawson's perfect casting as this character, to the way it felt, the whole episode felt kind of like an episode of Samurai Jack. To me, very not a lot of dialogue. The way that just, if again, it's this live action cartoon come to life. We get Michael Biehn in here. Man, at the end of this episode, I was like, I'm your Huckleberry. Like, if anybody even gets that reference, man, he was totally like, that felt like him and Doc Holliday at the end of Tombstone. This was just an incredible episode. The way Dave Filoni directed this, that he created Ahsoka, and he didn't. It was, some of it was subtle. It wasn't too flashy. It also made me feel like how I felt, like Don was saying in the video game, how I felt during a lot of times when I was playing Ghost of Tsushima. It felt very much inspired by Asian culture, and with the, even with the bell, the big bell that they had, it was just, yeah, I don't want to, my opinion is that this was like the best of the series, and it wasn't just because we got fan favorite characters interacting with each other. We got set up for other shows here, but it just was directed and written and acted and choreographed, and everything about this was just how you make a great episode of television.
Excellent. All right. Also, do want to mention, joining us live in the chat, we've got Devra Silva Surfa, fangirling and loving it. All very excited about this episode. Really want to hear what we've got in this. Also, Silva mentioning Guided Samurai Jack did the original 2003 Clone Wars cartoon. Very similar style and stuff. So it's a good pull right there. Look, there was a lot of great stuff in this episode. From the opening bit, how we've got Ahsoka really, the legend as kind of this ghost, this gray Jedi, and going in and out of the fog. There was some beautiful presentation in with this. It was definitely a Kurosawa kind of love letter there, with both the styling, the Diana Lee Inosanto, who played Morgan Elsbeth, brilliant. Her dad, Dan Inosanto, is a legend in Hollywood. He's one of the guys that trained with Bruce Lee. This is a girl that knows all of these styles. So, really was able to bring this, very specific kind of Kurosawa style and stance and everything forward beautifully. I like that we got some backstory. I love that it didn't go too far, because, of course, we cannot separate Baby Yoda and the Mandalorian, or Grogu. We'll get into all of that. So there was a lot of very good stuff. I did love the kind of fan service. I love the new presentation of the character. I thought I was very excited for this. But this is where the dark side comes in. If Sean Connery for some reason being Darth Vader right there, my apologies on that. Look, I like Rosario Dawson, and I was excited for her casting in this. The problem I have with this episode and her casting is she doesn't move right. And I know that's a nitpicky kind of thing. But I come from sword fighting. Stunts is my background. The way the body moves is something that is fascinating and awesome to me, and why I love martial arts. And Rosario Dawson is not a martial artist. She doesn't know how to move. She doesn't know how to fight. All of her sword fights, she's punching with the swords. Again, I realize this is all very nitpicky stuff. And I'm going to be very honest in throwing that out there. But even a lot of her characterizations, I didn't really see what she brought to the character. Honestly, I would have loved to have seen if Ashley Eckstein was at least, considered at some point to come over with this role. I didn't like her look. I thought that it looked like she had a headdress on the whole time and not an actual extension and tendrils of her body. It looked like she couldn't drop her head at any point. In fact, that's everyone. Fortunately, Michael Biehn, same way. And I think that's just part of the age. Everything was all very stiff and upright in movements. And I wasn't seeing someone who had spent their life connected to the Force as a warrior. I saw an actress doing a great job bringing up a new role. I don't know what's going on with my lights in the background there. I apologize, everyone. So I really want to get into, I think this kicks us off into a great area that I do want to get in. And again, I know that I am nitpicking in some stuff, and I don't mind telling each of you why you're wrong when you tell me what your opinions are. But let's kick things off with Ahsoka, because she was definitely what everyone was looking for. She is the Jedi. This is the bring up from our Clone Wars, our animated series. It is connecting many big parts of the universe. What did you guys think of Ahsoka in her presentation? How did she bring the character for you? Now, I know, Marc, for you, you don't have any basis from it. So I'm really curious on your opinion on this, and maybe we'll kick things off with you. I'm going to hold on that because I want to hear what the other guys think out from having that experience, and then we'll check in with somebody that has no background in on that. Rob, what was it how was Ahsoka brought to you? How did this character really live up to your expectations, or not? Or I know you're really a big fan, but anyway, talk about Ahsoka a little bit for us, will you?
Well, I mean, the way that I think we talked about this last week, that I wasn't on board with her character initially. She was a character who grew on me to become this character that by the end of the last season of the Clone Wars, and when she'd show up on, when she was on Rebels and stuff, I just love this character. I like how unique of a character she is. She's not really technically, a Jedi. She was, she's been removed from it. She can operate on her own. She can do things her own way. And I felt that here. Did I have some, I've never really noticed how she, other than like her body, I would agree that it was kind of stiff in this, but, and definitely the head, I'm not going to lie. I mean, but I've never really paid attention to how her head moved in the cartoon. As far as her whatever they are.
The Montrals are on top. The head tails, or Leku, are the ones that are on the side. Twi'leks also have Leku.
It did
nerd point there for you guys.
A little styrofoamy up close, like when they did some up close shots. But I thought, in the eyes, we do this a lot here, don't we? Where we talk about acting through the eyes. I thought a lot of her eye work was very much Ahsoka. She would give looks that really I felt like Rosario Dawson had been paying attention to the facial expressions that Ahsoka would make in a lot of, whether it was in an attack position or just in a conversation. Or I also felt like the scene when she's trying to test Grogu and talking to the Mandalorian and talking about first times. It felt playful. It felt like sometimes you were talking to a younger Ahsoka, but she's been through so much, and I felt like I forgave some of the things that I saw as flaws as to things that they can work on when they give her, clearly they're going to give her more to do with this character,
Right.
that they can work on it. I think that in COVID land, they might not have had the time to do all the things that they were going to see later. Because I'm not going to disagree that the way that they had things wasn't a little stiff. I just was so caught up in just really like seeing this actually play out for real. It's just, I never thought we'd get this. And so many different interpretations of things that we do get, they fall so short to me that this, as much as some of it wasn't quite how I wanted it to look, I'm trying to look at it as this is a great starting point, and they can work on the look. They can work on her stunts. They can, they'll have time to get her better, because, like other people have to go through this, and this was her first time, and she's done some things like Sin City and things like that. But I mean, Sin City was like 2005. So, it's giving her a chance now to see how much more, and get probably a good stunt person, get a really good stunt person to be in those positions when they can, where they need to. But I dug it. I can see why you have those opinions, though. I absolutely can, especially coming from your background. You're going to be way more critical of it than say me. Who I was just excited that she looked right to me. Like, even if the headpiece looked a little off. I just again, I don't want to be fanboying too much, but it just gave me what I wanted. It gave me everything I wanted, and wanted more. I'm glad that she didn't take over the show or anything. I thought it was just enough here, and just a good enough taste to also know where she's going, what she's been doing, why is she here, like what is the purpose of Ahsoka in this episode, what is her goals compared to what the Mandalorians' goals are. And knowing that even though we don't hear the answer to what her question, we know that that's just another thing to get excited about, because they wouldn't pose the question unless we were going to get an answer down the road. I'm done.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, Rosario Dawson is, I find her quite talented as an actress. I know there is some social media things and some issues that are going on right now, but I tend to try and keep that separate from what the character, what the actor is bringing to the character at the moment. We lost Don for a moment. He'll be back. He'll be back shortly. That's right. We just went straight to Marc on this one, but I do appreciate the fact that she left you. The performance left you wanting more, and I think ultimately that is really what we want to see here. Is we want to have a performance that wants you go, I want to see more of the characters. Well, in that case, I mean, that is success right there. Dawn, what about yourself? What was your feeling? It's going to mess up my order now instead of watching you on the screen. That's all right. We'll figure it out. What was your opinion there on Ahsoka and what she brought and the presentation of the character and all of that?
All right, first of all, sorry about that. I have my own little Grogu going around messing up things, as you can see. So I think they did, like I said, as far as the look is concerned, this somehow was even more accurate than Bo-Katan. Even though, the head tendrils were a little sketchy here and there. I still think that they did a great job of setting up the character, and they've done this throughout the series, especially in this season, with setting up pre-established characters that even if you have never seen any of the other shows or read any of the other books or anything, they still give you enough that you're able to latch on to the character and have them feel like they've been a part of the world. So it's not a thing of, oh, well, you just introduced this person and now we have absolutely no reference to why they're around or anything like that. So I think they did a great job with that as far as Ahsoka was concerned. Once again, seeing the white lightsabers in live action, I'm like, oh wow, this is amazing because we're used to red, blue, green, purple every now and then apparently yellow at the end of one of the movies. I don't know. I haven't seen that one, so I can tell you. So yeah, so to see those translated and the way that they introduced her with the whole kind of in the shadows kind of thing, I think was a very smart move because it for those of us who have seen the Clone Wars, it definitely ties back into her time on Coruscant, dealing with the underworld and how she had to kind of move in the shadows there. Right. So she's definitely kept that with her, and then also even her time as Fulcrum with the Rebel Alliance. So yeah, I mean, and obviously they are setting up the world with the introduction of all of these different characters in order to blow it out, and we're gonna wind up getting way more Star Wars shows. So it had been speculated for a while that there's going to be a Rebels sequel, possibly led by Ahsoka, and with the name drop that they had, when she had her battle at the end, they pretty much confirmed it. So, yeah, I'll pass it off to you. No, in fact, no. It's this guy now, right?
Yeah, now it's Marc's turn. Yeah, now, yeah. This is great because again, now we've heard the those with the experience from Ahsoka before, and now kind of a fresh take on it. Oh, also the yellow lightsaber, originally Luke's original lightsaber in the old Kenner action figures, the ones that zooped out of the arm and came back. For anyone old enough to remember those old style ones, I think that's where we first saw the yellow one. Anyway, Marc, talk to us about Ahsoka and what.
All right, well. Yeah, first off, I want to say that my headphones just died on me, so I hope we're not getting an echo because I'm listening to it.
No, still good. Yeah.
Now. Still good? Okay, cool. All right, cool. So, so as far as this character goes, as you guys mentioned, I'm not familiar with this character. Like, I know of her, like I've seen pictures and drawings and whatnot, but I hadn't watched the show, so I wasn't basing it off of any previous information. And I thought, I actually was very impressed with the way Rosario Dawson played her. I thought she came off as very Jedi-like, very sort of the way she was calm and held the wisdom, and I love her interactions with the Mandalorian and with just very matter-of-factly stating stuff like, oh, his name's Grogu and stuff like that. Just the way she was interacting felt very Jedi-like. So I'm kind of looking at this as if this is a new character. In my mind, is a really well fleshed out new character who I latched onto immediately. I can recognize immediately. There's a lot of development there. They know exactly who she is, and they did a really good job of portraying that. Now, as far as the fighting, I'm a novice. I understand. I've heard this in other movies too, and other people say, well, I didn't like this movie, or a lot of people were saying it about Iron Fist and stuff. I didn't like it because the fighting doesn't look real or whatnot. But for me, I'm a novice. I can understand that perspective totally because I feel that way in other things that I am knowledgeable about, and I see that they're not doing it correctly. But for this, I am totally not knowledgeable about it, so it was fine to me. In fact, I actually like the way they did her, like the way she took down all those people in the woods. It was sort of very effective, and I absolutely loved her end fight scene with what's her face, the main villain,
Morgan Elsbeth. Yeah,
Morgan Elsbeth. Yeah, I thought that was like really well done. I love how they didn't necessarily show the entire thing, how they cut back to Michael Biehn and the Mandalorian outside listening to it. I thought it was really well done. And for me, it was the way it was shot, like over that nice little pond area, it was very reminiscent to me of Kill Bill Volume 1. Where the end fight scene with the bride and Lucy Liu, which was a beautifully shot scene. I thought this one was just as beautifully shot, like the cinematography. And I think everything like that, the cinematography, the way it was shot and all that, was like probably the best the show has done so far. Now, as far as her thingies, I know you said in the chat what they are and how they look.
Montrolls and Leku.
There we
Montrolls are the ones on top. Leku are the ones that dangle.
Yeah. I still call them thingies, but
Yeah.
how you mentioned that they look kind of fake and more like a hairdress. I definitely can see that, and I was thinking that, but it didn't really bother me too much because I could understand that it would be very difficult because, as I said, I've seen pictures of this character, so I know what she looks like in the animation form, and I can see how it could be really difficult to translate something that looks cool in animation to real action. I mean, it could have been better, sure, but I actually think they did a respectable job at it. And for the most part, it wasn't too distracting. Like, I wasn't like, what the hell is that thing on her head? Like, for the most part, like, I can see how it was a bit iffy, but for the most part, I actually was. And I think that a lot in large part had to do with how well Rosanna Dawson played this character, how well she sold the character to me. So I was actually, as I said, even knowing nothing about the cartoon, I was super impressed with the portrayal in this character in this episode.
Excellent. No, that's. Oh yeah, now we are getting a little feedback on you. Yeah, sorry, but no, I'm really excited to hear that because again, I realize that what I'm saying is nitpicking, and I don't mean in any way to downplay the character, downplay Rosario Dawson's presentation of this. Now, just adjusting my expectations and viewpoints, I'm going to have perfectly fine with this. And yes, like you said, Rob, there's a lot of these areas where things can be worked on, improved upon, and so on like that. I did like the final fight, and yeah, it was. Unfortunately, for me, a lot of the episode did feel a little stuttered, and I realized part of that was a stylistic choice to try and present the story in a particular way. The final fight, it was actually good that they were able to cut in between. I think that helped them save on some of the choreography and not needing to worry about a giant fight, and they could focus on particular moments, which is something they did do really well. Through all this, we had Ahsoka doing great poses. The screenshots for this episode that you can find on the internet are astounding. Between when she lights up the blade between the two of them, she steps back, she's got the two quotes there, the attacking and the double swords. I mean, there's a lot of great poses, and the stuttered choreography actually works for that, and being able to cut away to other conversations and then back into the fight, it allows those moments to stay. So what I've got to say is, from a presentation, if they did felt that there might be some limitations, they worked around them very well. And yeah, this is definitely the beginning of a much bigger storyline, which is, I think, the next thing to kind of get into, that I did want to talk with you guys about, because obviously we have seen a lot in this season, the beginnings of new Star Wars storylines. We have Boba Fett being shown in the first episode, and the Boba Fett series is already being greenlit, and it's going to take place between what happens between Return of the Jedi and his appearance here in season 2. So we've got like that story of Boba Fett.
Quick question.
Yes.
Is Boba Fett gonna be played by Temuera Morrison?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Which is
Great news.
yeah. No, it's perfect casting, and yeah, you've got these actors that you can use. Same thing, obviously, with Bo-Katan. We've got her pursuit. How much is she going to be in here with Mandalorian pursuing Gideon? How much might this be another pursuit of some sort of Mandalorian storyline led by her? That's an entire possibility. Of course, what we get dropped, there's the Mandalorian storyline himself and the pursuit of him with Grogu. But the name drop we got here implies whole different arenas to go in. And that is, of course, who Ahsoka is looking for, and that is Grand Admiral Thrawn. For those of you who are not familiar, Mithranro, God, I cannot pronounce this. I was trying to practice too. Mithrarurodu. Sorry, everyone, how horrible that was. Better known as Grand Admiral Thrawn is a black-skinned, red-eyed Chiss male who first appeared in Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire trilogy back in 1991. A brilliant military tactician, Thrawn was the only non-human ever to gain the rank of Grand Admiral in the famously racist Imperial Navy, and had spent many years in the unknown regions before returning to Imperial space in the years following the Emperor's death. A powerful character whose brilliance made a significant threat to the New Republic. His exploits were sadly erased when Disney purchased Star Wars and made all of the old books non-canon legends. But of course, Thrawn was really popular with fans, appeared in a lot of comics and other series of books before and afterwards. And at least Disney was smart enough to recognize gold when they had it, as the character was later reintroduced in the animated Star Wars Rebels. And he was last seen aboard his flagship Chimera with the Jedi apprentice Ezra Bridger above the planet Lothal as it was pulled into hyperspace by the giant spacefaring whale octopi-like Purrgil. Which is kind of where things get potentially interesting. Because with his reappearance from who knows where now, unknown regions for sure, right? We could actually get a potential adaptation of Heir to the Empire right now. You could potentially clone Ezra instead of Jairus, so you could have an Ezra instead of a Jerus. And you could potentially have Ahsoka playing the Luke Skywalker role in the pursuit of everything. So you could potentially introduce one of the largest, biggest storylines in the old Bantam Legends books. So, I mean, that opens up a lot of doors right there. Okay, I'm gonna have to go around the other way. Don, we're gonna start with you and we're gonna work that way. Okay. Yeah, Don, you were a little excited when we were talking about Thrawn here. So what are you thinking about where this could potentially lead?
So, Grand Admiral Thrawn, one of the great Star Wars villains that, if you don't know about him, you need to learn. The fact that they name dropped him obviously means that he is back from the unknown regions, because this is after Return of the Jedi, and Rebels actually ends. I think Rebels. The end of Rebels is like I don't know, maybe about a year after.
No, Rebels ends right before the Battle of Yavin. And then its postscript jumps to the end, and the end screen, the end bit for Rebels is after Return of the Jedi, when Sabine goes and meets up with Ahsoka to go find Ezra.
Well, that's the part that I was talking about. Is the
Wait, quick question: when is the Battle of Yavin?
Battle of Yavin is basically Star Wars. That's the first Death Star. Yavin is the moon that they were orbiting around, or Yavin 4. Yes, thank you. So, yeah, sorry. Battle of Yavin tends to be the year zero of most of the Star Wars timelines. You have before the Battle of Yavin and after the Battle of Yavin. So,
correct. So, so this obviously means that Thrawn is back, and it should mean that hopefully Ezra is back. There have been a lot of speculations as to who would play Ezra in live action, or whether or not the Rebels sequel series would be live action. I think the fact that we have Rosario Dawson being introduced, her name dropping. Or name dropping Grand Admiral Thrawn, it definitely leads to to thinking that we're going to get the Rebels series in live action. I mean, when you think about what they've done with the Mandalorian and how absolutely glorious it has looked thus far, and the fact that they want to expand the technology that they're already currently using. They want to expand their subscriber base, and they also want to win back fans who were not quite impressed with the sequel trilogy. I think that this goes a long way to bridging the gap that was left when they decided to wipe out a lot of the expanded universe. You know, they're bringing a lot of it back in with dribs and grabs. You know, again, Grand Admiral Thrawn, Boba Fett being alive, Cobb Vanth, all expanded universe stories, and they're weaving it together with the things that Dave Filoni has been able to put together with Clone Wars and Rebels. And listen, so far I'm a very happy camper. You know, so I can't wait to see who they get to play. Excuse me, who they get to play Grand Admiral Thrawn in live action, and then also what his story, because now we've been introduced to Moff Gideon as kind of like the big bad, but could it be that Moff Gideon is only the big bad just for this particular show, and then the overall big bad for the Disney Plus series going forth is going to be Grand Admiral Thrawn? So
right? Yeah.
That's going to be the thing that really that I'm most excited to see.
Yeah, that's where I think they are. They're setting the stage for these different diverging storylines and possible spin-off characters. Now, Marc, had you read any of the old Bantam Star Wars books? Are you familiar at all, or was this just like, I mean, when she's like, "Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?" What was your response off of that?
Who? No,
Yeah.
that wasn't. I haven't read any of the books, but I am familiar. I've heard who Thrawn was. You showed that book, The Heir to the Empire. My sister actually bought that when it first came out, and I remember skimming through it, but I never actually read the whole thing. But then in later years, I've, of course, heard all about Thrawn and who he is. So when they name dropped Thrawn, I was like, oh, okay, I know exactly who that is. That's the dude from the books that everyone's talking about. Because I had this friend who was really into the extended lore, and he used to go on and on about him. So I wasn't actually aware that he was in Rebels until I looked it up after I watched the episode. I looked it up to find more information out about him, see he was Rebels. So I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I thought it was a pretty effective name drop. I wasn't as excited as maybe some of you guys were.
Sure.
But I still recognized it enough to say, oh, yeah, that's interesting. And I am interested to learn more about this character and to see more of them. And I'm asking you, when you brought up the possibility of doing an Heir to the Empire kind of on screen, like a sort of adapted version of it, I'm all for that. That sounds awesome to me. So I would love if they did something like that, even though I haven't actually read the book, but I heard enough about it. And it sounds like that would be a great way to sort of honor the fans and some of this material that they made on canon, which was kind of dickish of them to do. I can understand why they did that, though, because they don't want to be beholden to the side material and want to do their own thing. But it would be great if they could still bring some of it, like the more successful, the more popular ones back, which they already done in some form with bringing Thrawn back, and they're even upping their game on that. So I think that's great. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, well, and of course, as we both know, that long form series are the best way to do a book to screen adaptation. Yeah, because it really just gives you enough time to try and tell the fuller story that's usually allowed in a book, and that would be an awesome. I mean, you've got 3 seasons right there. If you wanted to do kind of a Thrawn variation storyline and do a somewhat adaptation. And people could even get a Mara Jade eventually. Who knows? But Rob, what about?
I've heard rumors about that.
Yeah. So Rob, what about yourself? What was your feeling off of hearing Thrawn, and where you think this might take things?
Well, I think John covered it pretty well. The one thing that I'll add. To Ezra bridge the gap, if you will let me say that. It's horrible tone. Sorry. Would be since we've got Katie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan, I would like to see the guy who voices him from Game of Thrones, Ramsay Bolton himself, Ewan Rion, play the character.
Oh, see, I didn't know I was about to think, God, who did do his voice? Because I don't often look that up specifically, but I'm sorry, I stepped away from my mic. If anybody lost what I'm saying, I'm just ooghing and ahhing about that kind of idea, because this would be a great...
And I'm looking at his face, and you frame it right, you color his face up.
And it would be a great role
work
for the actor to step away from the Ramsay kind of psycho bit that he could be easily pigeonholed in to do a different character. Ooh, and if they did the clone version of him and then brought him in. Sorry, nerd brain going crazy now. Ooh, I like that. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about, you said, like, Ashley Eckstein and we got Katie Sackhoff, and it's like, well, why don't we get these people? He's a professional actor already. He's played the character. If he's game, I mean, he's good at playing villains. His voice acting in that was great. He really brought this kind of, there was that great menace to his voice in it that was way different than Ramsay Bolton, who was just a madman. But like, I just think that would be my choice to cast him, is get the guy who voiced him. If we're literally taking these cartoons and making them live action, let's get the actors that can play the parts that already have the fan base for it. It'll give more recognition to the show. It'll get more people to watch Rebels. It'll get more, it's just smart business and giving us what we want, So that was all I had, because I was just, when I heard her say Thrawn, I just saw Ramsay Bolton in blue face and red eyes, and I just was like, oh yeah, give it to me.
No,
because I love that actor, and I love that actor.
Hey, I think that this would be a great thing to carry on and carry forward on it. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is I mean, we know that they're using the Mandalorian is the new center of the Star Wars universe, and the fact that they're using these to establish small bits that they can then spin off to various series or presentations, I think it's a smart way to do it. I think they've really figured out how to build a universe slowly. It's not quite a Iron Man 2 Age of Ultron type slam in the face. They're doing it a little bit easier on their build. Well,
yeah. If we're talking about, also building the bigger universe, I mean, we keep talking about this. The future is streaming. I mean, it's here, right? It's not even the future anymore. And I think that the platform is going to be, get as much of the Disney's going to try to make as many shows and made for the platform movies that they can. It's less risky than putting it out at the theater. They got to get some of the fan base back. They've got time to build these great worlds, and down the road, if theaters are still going, then they can start testing the waters again, hopefully with a plan this time. But I just think that this opens up, what you said, Boba Fett and Ahsoka series, like maybe just a new Rebels. I think that the sky's the limit, really, and the only thing is that that still stinks is that they won't just pay the people who wrote the books to develop the stories that are right there. Instead of cherry picking things and working it so that it fits in the deal that they made, that gets to leave that stuff out of canon. But I mean, if the reality is that that's just how it is, then we have to temper our expectations, and hopefully they give us some of the things that we want. Like you said, using Ezra instead of Jarrus, that kind of thing, tweaking it enough where, some people will be like, well, it's the Star Wars fan base. No matter what you do, you're going to piss somebody off.
Right.
So, you're every time they do something, they roll the dice. And I think that in this so far, with what they've done with The Mandalorian, as long as they keep it up in the fashion that they're doing it now, then they will slowly but surely get the fan base back so that they can start taking more chances in good faith, and get enough distance between the old lore and being able to create their new lore. Like with the comic books too. I mean, they've been working really hard to rework a lot of things with the new Star Wars run in the comics, where they're telling their story that's in between Empire and Jedi right now, which coincidentally actually brings back Luke's yellow lightsaber. He's actually currently using a new yellow lightsaber in the comic, in between Empire and Jedi.
Wow.
So I don't know. I think it's we speculate a lot on here, and I hate to go down too many rabbit holes about it, but if they just keep up what they're doing right now, and try not to rush things too fast, work on what they need to work on, like say things like training the actors and stunt coordination and things like that, and getting the look of things a little bit better. But I think Disney's gonna really start to see even more success with their deal with Star Wars over the next couple of decades.
Yeah. Well, and I think they've got a lot of potential there with all of their expansion. I mean, one thing that Marc had said about the look that they had in with this episode, so much of the work of the setting of bringing you in was just, look, the background shot that just had the barely see, I don't know what kind of giant creatures were roaming through the trees in the half fog. I didn't need to see what those were. The one shot where it's around and I'm like, boom, I'm there. I'm in this world. And I think it does allow them to focus more on getting some good, tight storylines. And then they can just give the effects crew, now go build the world that I want to see in the background. And it's something that's really kind of astounding they can do with this show. So we've, of course, got another big cameo in with this episode. Famed 80s actioneer Michael Biehn of Aliens and The Terminator and, of course, Tombstone. Always excited to see an actor that I haven't seen for a bit. Sometimes this can be the big breakthrough of their career. Okay, I admit it. It took me a couple of scenes to go, oh, that is Michael Biehn. I mean, I knew I should have recognized him. I knew it was somebody, but it did take me a little bit. So that's one thing. And look, well, it was great to see him. man, he's definitely getting a little old there. He's not moving right. They had him in that armor with the neck thing that, like, then he just can't really move his body at all. And I don't think that's flattering. Got a big movement thing this episode, don't I? But yeah, any thoughts on seeing Michael Biehn before, on his performance? Were you hoping he was going to make it? Did you knew he was just doing a one-off?
It felt like a one-off to me. I like I said in my initial thoughts, I mean, I knew who he was right away. I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. It's so great. Last time I saw him in anything of note, I think was Planet Terror. The Robert Rodriguez Quentin Tarantino double feature. But he, you know, part of this felt like, again, it was just he was there to be the character from Tombstone. He's the guy that's Marc working for the bad. He's the second in command to the bad guy. He's there to just, I mean, even in his whole approach to the Mandalorian, sitting there like, you know, I ain't got no quarrel to you. That's what he says to Doc Holliday in that movie, you know, and then the Mandalorian just sitting there, literally like Doc Holliday getting ready to just blow him away. Like, go ahead, Billy Ringo, or is it Johnny Ringo? Johnny Ringo, like
Johnny Ringo, yeah.
Huckleberry, you know, just sitting there getting ready to just blast him. You know, it was really obvious and it was really on the nose. And the thing is I did not care at all. If it was fan service, it was the right kind of fan service. I mean, even the guys like, you know, hey, you know, this, you know, I'm, you know, the kind of guy that's, you know, would fight for the right reasons and give my life for the right reasons, right? And he's like, but this isn't one of them. And
yeah, I did like that.
I think that he's just, but he's just, they cast him because they wanted that guy. They wanted the guy who could play that, and they got a veteran actor. Like, look, I mean, did we really think that Carl Weathers, bringing him back to play a bigger part in this show, was going to work? I didn't know it was going to work. He's a, you know, he doesn't, you know, move around real well either, you know, but it's still good to see him. The actor does you know, Carl Weathers does a fantastic job. And I think Michael Biehn did what he was hired to do. And did he move like, you know, he couldn't move literally? Yeah, but I didn't need that from him. He was just there to play that kind of role. He wasn't going to be somebody later on down the road. I think it was like asking, I think that role could have gone to anybody, and they gave it to somebody who we would like to see in this instead of just some guy, you know, just anybody off the street could have played this. Instead, they got, you know, the guy from Terminator and Aliens, and it's just, you know, maybe, you know, they say there's no small parts, and I think that he did great with what they gave him, and I stuck around just long enough. I wanted him to get shot, but in the best possible way, you know. Like, I knew he was going to go for his gun, but he's done that before, and he's good at it, and I loved every second of it. Even when he's like, "I think your side won," you know, he could have walked away, you know, but like he, you know, Johnny Ringo doesn't walk away, so oh well.
Yeah, so as I mentioned to Darren before we went on air, like the entire time I was watching this episode, I didn't know who the actor was, but I knew I recognized him the whole time. I was like, oh God, who is this guy? I know I've seen him before. And at the end, when the credits rolled, Michael Bihn's name came up. I'm like, oh my God, that's him? Oh, it's like, it didn't click. It didn't like, oh, that makes total sense. I was just like, really? That's him? That's what he looks like now? Like, I was thinking more of some random old people I've seen in other TV shows. I wasn't even thinking of Michael Biehn. So when I look back on this character, I look back on I judge the character on the character himself, not really. It's not like all I can see is Michael Biehn. I see this badass character. I think in itself, regardless of who is played by, was very effective. I mean, it's very familiar, but it works for the story. And I think Michael Biehn played him very well, and so much so that he disappeared into the role for me personally, like I guess I'm not as familiar with Tombstone as everyone else is, but I mainly know him from Aliens. God, this is my favorite movie of all time. But anyway, so I thought he disappeared into the role, and I thought he really did a great job. And I think the character was well written and really worked for the story. Like, I love that aspect of how he was sitting outside. I was like, oh, I wonder which side's gonna win, and how calm he was. I was like, oh, it looks like your side won. I guess I'll give up. And he was gonna have of course he was gonna try to kill him anyway, but Mandalorian saw it. So I thought that all worked. So I thought it was great. Yes, definitely give veteran actors some more jobs. They need money too. But yeah, that all worked for me.
Excellent. What about you, Don? Any thoughts on seeing old Hicks showing up?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he should never have died in Alien 3. But anyway, yeah, look, I was like Mark. I did not immediately recognize him, and honestly speaking, it wasn't until I watched a couple other reviews that I was like, "Oh wait, oh that's who he is." I didn't recognize the name because it's just been so long. But listen, I think he played the part perfectly. Especially that standoff with him and Mando, right? Because remember, he was described as a gunfighter. In fact, when Mando goes to see Ahsoka, he's like, yeah, well, he's there with like, sorry, the boss is being protected by a gunfighter. I'm like, oh, okay. So that standoff that they had there, while he's like, I wonder who's gonna win, and you're just hearing the spear versus the lightsabers in the background, and he's like, well, looks like your side won, and you see him, and he's going, he's slowly, but the look on his face is like, I'm gonna shoot you the moment this gun hits the floor. Right? So luckily, Din Djarin happens to be a seasoned veteran of things like this, and he's just like, yeah, no, trust me, you're not gonna get a chance on that one. So, yeah, I think that the character was brilliantly cast, and even though he didn't get to do a lot of movement. For one, I mean, did you guys notice the armor? Because that armor is Clone Wars era. Like, if you look at Captain Rex, that is the kind of armor that they have him wearing.
Oh, I did notice that.
Yeah, just colored black, or it could be, who knows what could have happened to it after all this time. But yeah, that's the armor that Captain Rex wears in Clone Wars. So that was kind of cumbersome. Wouldn't expect him to do a lot of moving in that kind of armor.
Right. Nice. Just out of quick curiosity, is anybody else's video screens frozen, or is that just me?
Seems like just you, my friend.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Good. Well, we'll keep things going. Getting notices on my data plan here. I might be running out of data. So I want to hit some point here real quick before things go out. Oh, also, Silva Surfa in our chat mentions that Jude Law would be an excellent Thrawn in his opinion. I think that's a fair cast thought. We can put him in the room. But let's talk about the other big reveal here, if we can, and that being Grogu. The real name for Baby Yoda. And of course, he comes with a little bit of a tragic backstory, which might shine a little potential darkness into his Force using. I did think it would be very appropriate that Ahsoka was mentioning her familiarity with what the dark side can do, even to the best Jedi. Was a nice little comment. So, yeah, let's get into I guess Grogu now. We can't call him Baby Yoda. Are we going to keep calling him Baby Yoda?
Well, yeah, I guess we are going to keep calling him Baby Yoda. No, well, until he's back. Okay. Well, the whole thing with not calling him Baby Yoda. I mean, I can't remember. You guys always throw out what Mando's real name is, and I forget it every episode.
I have no idea.
So saying Grogu is easier than saying the child, but still not as easy as saying Baby Yoda. I'm more interested in the whole thing about him being found at trained at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant during the Clone Wars. That's the stuff that I got, because I was when I was taking my notes for the episode, I was starting to make some connections to why this is Yoda, just through some of his mannerisms and the way he behaves. And then she just drops the name Grogu, and I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. But I still contend that, who knows? Maybe Grogu is maybe his race has several names during different cycles of their life. I don't know. Sorry, I tried to just kind of riff.
I appreciate you going in on that. You guys might still have to carry on for me. I'm having some definite connection issues. So I'm going to try and see if I pop this up. So if I disappear for a moment, go right ahead. Yeah, so you guys are all still frozen on me, but as long as you're still seeing video, that's all that's important.
I would like to chime in on Grogu. Because in the chat, Deborah points out a Yoda clone. Or is it like Yoda? But I don't know. Me personally, I would prefer myself if it was just another member of the species, which is what this episode is playing it off as, and it's what it's what I don't want to say her name wrong, but you know who I'm talking about. The established Jedi character. It's what she was saying in his backstory about being in the temple and escaping. I think that's really great. I love the way that they dropped all this information too, how she was just able to get that from him, and how the whole thing about her refusing to train him, that I don't know. That seemed like we kind of did this. It's like that we do this every time someone wants to be trained. We're like, oh, you're too old to be trained. Like through all this again. But I guess it makes sense for her character. But I was kind of like, yeah, again. But as far as Baby Yoda being called Grogu, I'm fine with that. I'm actually happy that we have a name, because I think Baby Yoda was kind of always just a placeholder. I never was going to call him the child. I think that's stupid. John Favreau was like, oh, he's not Baby Yoda, he's a child. I'm like, shut up. No one's going to listen to Yoda. But now that we have a name, Grogu, now I can attach that. Okay, now you give me a firm name, then okay, that's good. I'm still going to be thinking of him as Baby Yoda for a while, but eventually I'm sure we'll ease back into the Grogu. And I love how whenever the Mandalorian said Grogu, he perked up, he recognizes his name. That was a nice touch. So I was happy with all that.
All right, excellent.
Also, I just to go into what I was talking about when I was talking about mannerisms. Before, okay, this will definitely give you some time to talk about this. Before they dropped the name Grogu, I'd been thinking about how Baby Yoda acts with things, or before he was Grogu, when he was Baby Yoda to us. I think about the introduction of Yoda in Empire, where I'm sure he was expecting Luke, at some point, and he was putting on a little bit of an act. But part of him, he's been by himself for a really long time on Dagobah. So all of a sudden, some guy dropping in with a whole bunch of stuff coming, hanging out of his X-Wing, going through all his stuff like it's his, just not even caring, eating his food. It just reminded me of Baby Yoda just grabbing the eggs, as many as he wanted, taking things. He always wants that little ball, things that aren't his. He, like even Yoda was like, mine, mine, mine. Like, I don't know, maybe that's a cultural thing with his species of just, kind of like, oh goodness, why can't I always the Greyjoys, right? Where it's just you just take what you want, you take it and it's yours, right? Maybe that's part of his culture. Is this you see it, you want it, you take it, it's yours. I don't know, but that's what I was thinking about, was that if this was like Baby Yoda, well, it would track that he likes to just take what he wants and eats what he wants.
Could be, but I mean,
okay, and now this must be D from the roof of his house, holding a wire in his mouth to keep the signal working. And he
oh my god! Well,
trying to get everything to work. Oh, it's your glasses, not a wire. Okay.
Well, the one thing that I did want to say, the reveal of him having previously been trained and what he kind of adapted to do to survive, obviously now puts a lot of things in perspective. His species is long-lived, right? So his kind of maturation phase goes a lot slower than species that are not as long-lived as his are. So for him, yeah, Ahsoka said he had been trained by many masters while he was at the temple. And he had to keep up this childlike persona in order to stay alive for the past, 30 years it's been since the Clone Wars at this point?
Almost, yeah. It was 20 before Battle of Yavin, or 19 before the Battle of Yavin. So, yeah, 28, 30 years, something like that.
Right. So it's one of those things where he's kept up the childlike persona because, for one, he had to do that to survive, and then two, he's also had no guidance. So we got to figure out. We still need to figure out who it was that took him or saved him from Order 66, because we saw this guy go in and slaughter everyone he possibly could. Yeah, that's one of those things where that's another part of the mystery that is. I mean, it's one of as many questions as this answered. It also brought up a bunch of new questions, because who were his masters? Maybe it doesn't matter. What made him decide to kind of forego the Force for such a long time, and then what made him kind of latch on to our main protagonist the way that he did. I mean, because to a certain extent, he really doesn't need him. Like, when you find out that, the dude's been trained by Jedi, right? He knows how to use the Force. Before this, we're thinking, okay, this is, he just kind of innately is able to do this, and it's like, no, he is not Rey Palpatine. He cannot just use the Force because he can use the Force. He actually does have training. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to find out the gaps in his backstory. But I do like the fact that we got some information on him, and he's not just this aimless, wondering, 50-year-old child.
Yeah, I agree, and thank you everyone for patience and filling in while I was having some issues. Obviously, I had to relocate here to a better internet reception range. Well, I think he was right. It was one thing, definitely, it was a good timing to give us some background on the child. It's been long enough, a season and a half. You can't really stretch that out. You had to give us something. Honestly, Grogu's growing on me. The more I hear about it, it just sort of drips in. It seems like very appropriate for the species. Yoda, Yaddle, Grogu. That all seems to make sense. Two syllables tops. But of course, I mean, kind of like what you were mentioning down there, Mark, this is the kind of standard storyline of no, we can't train you because, of course, we can't separate the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, Grogu, because that's what the whole story is built on. It's that character interaction, and what we're seeing, of course, is the development of a family. We see throughout the episode how reticent Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, is to give up Baby Yoda or Grogu. He's an expectant father as he's sort of pacing in the background, watching Grogu and Ahsoka, mind chat, and he's like, "Oh, I guess I'll go get the baby now. It's time to go, baby. You got to get ready, buddy." It's very much established that sort of family dynamic. And I think that's not only important for Din as a character. I think what they set for Baby Yoda here for Grogu is maybe a parent is what he needs. He needs a person where he can feel safe with. That really, while he may be on, a decision point of could he go to the dark side, could he go to the light side, the Mandalorian, Din, is the perfect character to help guide. He is a warrior that also still understands the right way to do things, that there is still honor in one's actions, and that the world is not necessarily a black and white clean place, but you can make choices that define who you are. I think in some ways they're setting this up as a perfect kind of, I guess what it's always been, lone wolf and cub, of a pairing of characters that need each other in order to become the better versions of themselves. So I'm kind of hoping that that's what we're going to reveal when we get off to the planet and do our meditation on top of the Seeing Stone on the rock, where he could choose his path. I mean, how vague can you get? Sure, that's perfect Jedi stuff. Take him to a rock. He could choose what he wants to do, and he chooses more eggs. All right. Well,
what I was wondering was who got him out? Who got him out, and what part did that play in the decisions that Grogu was making to why he, was he told you can't do this, you got to just blend in? And I'm trying to rack my brain of who escaped Coruscant that would have had him. It was none of it, like Obi-Wan didn't have him. Yoda didn't have him, or at least maybe Yoda did. I don't know. There's a list of people that just kind of are MIA in my mind that would have been trusted to do this, because I mean, and when did it happen? Okay, I'm about to just no. I was gonna say Mace Windu got him out. That Mace Windu isn't dead. An old handless Mace Windu got Yoda out of there, baby Yoda out of there. But and Samuel
was going to say the same
shows up
thing.
in the, I'm sorry, but yeah, no, that was just what I wanted to do.
Sorry.
I just wanted to throw that in there of who did get him out, because that was the other mention, and I loved the way that they gave the exposition about Baby Yoda about Grogu, without Grogu being able to communicate it, and him just sitting there with the facial expressions, understanding the trauma that this little guy had gone through, finally understanding that. I really liked how they presented that. Through her speaking his thoughts. I really thought that was great.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Nice.
I have some thoughts on who could have gotten Baby Yoda. What about Bail Organa?
Oh, that's a thought. Well, but it's also, I think it's a good question. Is when did that happen? Because I think he was in the temple, and then at the end of the Clone Wars, he was taken by the Imperials, and has he been studied the whole time? Now, obviously, it gotten away at some point because he was on the planet where Din got hired to go get him. So is that like when the Empire broke up, did someone steal him from a lab and was holding him out for ransom or whatever? I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. As far as they want to give us information, I'll eat it up. I don't know how much, of those storylines all have to be perfectly spelled out. I think it's more just sort of seeing how his just how their relationship, how their needs for each other are going to kind of sort of grow. But I think that's a good point, because I think getting some of that background that might share in some of like why he would, I guess any fear was sort of grab the dark side. That's sort of where that goes.
I have a theory.
Yep.
Tinfoil. Totally tinfoil. It was Moff Gideon that rescued him. Remember, Moff Gideon knew who he was and said, he is more important to me than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah,
and
but
remember, he killed the Werner Herzog's character. Because remember, Werner Herzog's character was like, look, I don't care if he's alive or dead. Just bring him here so we can use him. And Dr. Person was like, no, you can't kill him. I mean, look, think about it. He knows who Din Djarin is, right? He knew who Cara Dune was. He knew who Grief Karga was. He's been around since the Clone Wars, right? It could be a thing where, secretly in the background, Moff Gideon has been doing his own kind of experiments. We saw him with the Dark Troopers. I mean, there is so much here, and it's like, why is he specifically after this kid? There is something that he knows that we're still not being privy to. And imagine what a twist that would be to find out that he was the one who actually rescued him and, kept him hidden for a while, until he could figure out how to do whatever it is that he's doing right now.
Right.
And at some point he lost him and was like, oh, you know what? No. I'm glad, finally, after all this time, I finally found the one Jedi that I rescued when I wasn't supposed to be rescuing any Jedi.
It makes sense. The Silver Surfer mentions here, Moffs did have high positions in the Old Republic. They were like higher than governors and such. So, I mean, that would give him the placement to be able to do that. I don't know. I like it. I think these are fun things that we'll find out a little bit more. And I think that's going to help us explain some of that potential darkness in Grogu that Ahsoka is so concerned about. One last question, and I know this is really more of a animated fan question than anything else. Was that a Lothal cat that we saw in the alley there? Did we get a nice little reference there for a Lothal cat? I thought that was awesome. The planet Lothal is where Ezra Bridger and everyone, for the ones who haven't seen Star Wars Rebels, that's the planet that Ezra Bridger and everyone, all those adventures were having happen. A Lothal cat is a local, cat. And what we saw scared in the alleyways while Ahsoka was hunting down the guards. So Cool. Thanks, Rob. I was hoping that was exactly what it was that I saw there. All right. Well, we've gone pretty long here as I expected we were going to. I think it's probably about time to wrap things up. We are on the back end of the season, as you can see, this being episode 5. So we've got 3 more coming up. We got to get to whatever this old Jedi temple is going to be. Or is Moff Gideon going to get in the way? Because, of course, he still has that tracker on Mando's ship on the Razor Crest. So, yeah, really curious. Of course, we don't know because we don't get sneak previews on this show. We got to walk in blind every week, which, I don't know, is kind of fun. Also, Silva's mentioning here, also the assassin droids were HK models, another nod to Knights of the Old Republic. Nice. So yeah, let's go ahead and wrap things up. Don, why don't you tell people what's up, where they can find you, and any other final thoughts you got?
Yeah, for one, I just wanted to say this was an excellent episode. I'm probably going to watch it again right after we finish. Yeah, you can find me here every week with the guys, building up my war chest in the background. Yeah, and obviously fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. And any other things that we do. Also on Twitter at @IDonWilly. That's IDonWilli. Darren, as always, thank you for having me. And Mr. Marc from Enchantment of Eternity, why don't you take it away, good sir?
All right, yeah, so I'm Marc. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity, and I, of course, thank you guys so much for allowing me to guest on this perfect episode to talk about. It was really great talking about this episode with you guys. So, as Darren mentioned at the top of the video, I will be covering The Expanse. I will be doing my own personal reviews, probably the day it's released, but the very next day, the day after it comes out, we'll be doing a live stream, and I'm very pleased that Darren has agreed to be my co-host in that. So, very much looking forward to that, and of course, I have special guests, including these 2 guys here, to join me for that. So that's going to be every Thursday night because it's going to drop on Wednesday, I believe. So I'm really looking forward to that, and love The Expanse. Like, this season, I read the books, and I gotta tell you, if you haven't read the books, like this, when I read book 5, the first thought was, I can't wait to see this adapted on screen. It's like, it's everyone's favorite book. One of the actors referred to season 5 as the Infinity War of The Expanse, and I think that's fitting. So I am really in for this season. Can't wait for it. So really super psyched. And I'm also covering Star Trek Discovery on my channel, and all things Star Trek. I'm also doing rewatches of Breaking Bad, and I'm going to start a rewatch of the 90s version of The Outer Limits. I already started watching that. I'm surprised of how poorly it aged, but I'll be really interested in covering that one as well. So anyway.
Just a couple of things. I wanted to mention how Ahsoka was really just to kind of for this episode, with the way it was just done, with that kind of Kurosawa look, she was really a Ronin in this. If you think about it, she's a Jedi. She doesn't have a master anymore, so she's kind of like a samurai without a master, which is a Ronin. Diana, I liked the little bit about Diana Lee in Sonato's character Morgan Elsbeth. Her background being that she helped build the Imperial Starfleet after her whole people were killed. I thought that was a nice little mention in there to give a little bit of background to her character. And why didn't she just say, hey, there's this guy named Luke Skywalker, kind of won the whole thing. Why don't you take Grogu over to see him? I find it hard to believe that Ahsoka doesn't know Luke Skywalker. She doesn't have to know him, but she would know the guy who blew up 2 Death Stars. You don't have to go to a top of a mountain and some stones when you just go, hey, there's Princess Leia. Go find Leia Organa and talk about her brother. He's kind of a big deal. Thought that was a little weird. But you can find me on my Working Gun reviews, where we're doing old Shield new reviews. We're doing Agent Carter reviews with Corey Shoemaker. We've got the Twitch channel going with Smirking Gun Plays, and also on YouTube at the same name. Mondays we got His Dark Materials, and back here for Agents of Shield season 2, which I really got to start buckling down and rewatching most of it, probably kind of zipping through the episodes, but that's where you can find me.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much, as always, for making these Fandalorian reviews so exciting, so informative. And Deborah, Silver Surfer, fangirling and loving it. Everyone joining us in the chat. Really appreciate you not only catching us live, but sharing your insights too. Always appreciate the extra bits of knowledge you guys can drop and share for us as well. So obviously I'm D. This is D's Reviews. We are doing Fandalorian, covering the Mandalorian every week until this ends up. We've got season 2 of Agents of Shield, or our Agents of Shield season 2 review on Fans of Shield. That's how I'm going to say it. Is in 2 weeks, Tuesday, the 15th of December, 6 p.m. Pacific. And then, of course, you can catch me over on Marc's channel, Enchantment of Eternity, as soon as The Expanse drops. Diving into that glorious piece of sci-fi. Amos Burton is the best character ever. I'm just going to say that right now. So, yeah, that's it. Thanks, everybody who's joined us live, everyone who joined us in the archives. Appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we will catch you all next week. Take care now, and bye-bye. See, I've got to hit 5.